recording.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Depression Vacation Podcast. I'm speaking quickly because I feel like I'm on a news thing. I don't know. I don't get to do the intro. Well, it's not that I don't get to. It's that I don't step up to do
Well, you don't know how to talk like this, see? In a Midwest-slang accent, like in the 1930s. You have to talk quick, you have to talk quite concise, and you have to accentuate all of your vowels and consonants at the same time. Welcome to Depression Vacation Podcast, the one-stop round around the clock. I lost myself there. I'm going to blame part of it on the cold, but...
Yeah, no, that's fine.
My brain was out of ideas.
Yeah. Like I was just saying, like I don't really step up to do it, so...
You should more often.
I know. I'm so pleasant and agreeable. I'm good at being a greeter. I don't know.
That's why you work in banking, hospitality.
Right, yeah. Sure. That's what people like when they come to the bank. Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, today is February 3rd that we're recording. It'll be live on the 5th. So yeah, we are in Love Month.
Love Month.
Yeah, the month of love. My
first married love month.
Oh.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Is it going to be any different than your other love months?
Not really.
Yeah.
We have this thing that we do, and I'm going to tell you about it, but I don't want everybody to steal our idea. We always go on our Valentine's Day date on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, you told me this last year, I remember.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah, we're doing that again this year. Yeah, and, you know, continuing to look for houses this month, too. We actually put in an offer on a house that we got outbid on last week. So
I was wondering what the conclusion to this whole saga was, because this was going on while we were podcasting on Tuesday.
Right, yeah. So we lost out on the bid. Ended up being more money, and they waived inspections.
Yeah, so this is a very tricky... I had forgotten that people keep doing this, because... the first bid for the house I put in, I got way outbid, by the way. Like, I bid 10 grand over the asking price, and somebody bid 20 grand over me, so 30 over asking price. Mm-hmm. And I had to waive inspection, too, and I was really uneasy about it. And the realtor that I had contacted was like, okay, I'm going to tell you, like, it's perfectly fine if you want the inspection. You should want the inspection. Just the way it's going right now, if you don't waive the inspection, you're probably not going to have a prayer in hell. So I waived the inspection and still didn't have a prayer in hell of getting the house.
Yeah, it's tough out there. We're looking at another one today that we're probably not going to do because it has like a monthly HOA fee of like $173 a month.
Yeah.
Which is a little excessive for me.
My HOA fees are not that expensive. It's like $200 or $300 a year ish.
I didn't even know you had an HOA.
It's very laid back. It's like it.
Well, $200 a year is really agreeable.
See, the deal is with the HOA, like I don't even like calling it an HOA because it's not. It's the Bellevue Park Association, and all of the money that they gather from these fees is really just used for upkeep for the common areas.
Sure.
Like, because my neighborhood has all those like open fields,
the parks and
and it's mostly to pay the groundskeeper who comes in and does it pretty cheap to just take care of everything.
Yeah.
Some of it might be paid for like whatever property taxes are on our community building too, but like it's all put back into the community, and it's not that excessive. So because HOAs are kind of a scam in general.
Yeah. I think $173 a month is pretty outrageous.
Yeah, like that's a sizable, like that would be an additional 10% on my mortgage every month.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's a little wild. So we're probably not going to get it, but there's not a lot of inventory right now, so we're just kind of picking up showings as we go and just kind of hoping for the best, and you know.
Yeah, one of the guys who works with us and does camera, who's super young too. He's like 23 or 24. Him and his new wife just got a nice little townhouse, sort of kind of where Ashley Madavi lives, like right off of Derry Street. And he said that, like, straight up, he's like, yeah, I'm not going to lie. My in-laws paid for a lot of the down payment for us to get a house because they just wanted us to get in there. And I'm like, well, that's like the best gift they can give you because like paying that mortgage is going to be, you're not throwing away rent every month.
Right. So. Yeah. So that's mostly what's been going on. And, so Love Month is going to be busy, but excited. We don't do a whole lot. I'm still trying to convince him that we should get each other gifts. He's like, we don't need to get each other gifts. We're married. I'm like, nope, gifts still happen.
You're married, and that's the best gift you could have ever given me.
Yeah.
Oh, you're sweet, but also sucky. Give me a gift.
I was like, at least flowers. I like flowers.
Yeah. It's tough to get Lauren gifts for certain things. Like, she doesn't flowers are not exactly her jam. She doesn't really like gifts in general, which is why I usually like. I guess I can say this now because I finally gave her Christmas present last weekend. But I got her one of those 3D art stones of her dog, which it was it was quite a thing. But she, being a big Lord of the Rings fan, and this was so cute because we actually mind melded on this pun name at the same time. She was like, "It's my own Arkenstone," and we looked at each other. We're like, "The Barkenstone," because it's the dog, and yeah, perfect stuff. We only had one Valentine's Day last year together. Mm-hmm. It was actually like 2 days early because that was just when our schedules aligned. But initially we had the idea of going out to a fancy place for dinner, but we kind of just looked at each other and we're like, do you want to just get mac salad and eat that as an entree and watch Community? And that's what we did. And
that's cute.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed to going. I've never actually gone out for a fancy Valentine's Day dinner because
I like doing that. I think it's fun.
I would like it too.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. And, very important to keep dating, in a marriage. So, we went out on a date the other night, but the only reason why we called it a date was that we were going to look at a house and we were like, well, let's just get dinner after we see the house. And we went to a pretty nice place. So I was like, it's like we're on a date. Mm-hmm. So, gotta
house
pick out
date.
Those little... Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. I wish we did more dates. We tend to, because our schedules haven't aligned too much in the last year, usually we just hang out and spend time together, which is also really nice. We have a diner we like to go to very specifically for food, which is good, not expensive. And we have gone out to dinner at fancier places. But honestly, Lauren is kind of I would prefer just to get the stuffed French toast at the diner, which is what we do.
Yeah, well, that's really nice. And I think for us too, at least once in a while, because routine is great and that's what, the little moments that you spend together. But at the same time, anything you do that's kind of outside of your normal routine is kind of nice and novel if you're doing, the person you're doing it with is special to you.
Well, our routine is just not seeing each other for a long time. So
well, then it's
we have
so
very
special.
different frames of reference for but there are we were actually talking about this. We went out to Drinks with Wallace last Sunday, and we did go on a date. We went to go see Next to Normal, and I kind of was talking to her, and I was like, with all the long gaps in the times that we've seen each other just because of happenstance, we call each other every day, and we talk for usually an hour-ish on the phone. And I was like, if we hadn't kept in constant talking and just doing all that stuff, this probably wouldn't have worked out by now, just because, not for lack of, because we really like each other and we really get along with and mesh well with each other, but sometimes just not seeing somebody for a long time is too much of a thing.
Well, my dad was seeing someone for a few months there, and he just broke up with her, and that was exactly the reason why, because he keeps matching with these people who live in Hagerstown and New Jersey. I'm like, Dad, there are women closer to you. So everyone, my dad is single, so please get him a girlfriend, because his most recent new hobby is sending me very cringy profiles from Tinder, and I'm scared.
This sounds like a movie waiting to happen. Please marry my dad.
Please, yeah, right? That would be a fun rom-com. Kind of like The Parent Trap, but not The Parent Trap.
Yeah. It's what was I going to say? The dating apps are not always forthcoming. I don't know if you experience this using dating apps as to where the person is. Because this happened to me during the pandemic, there was somebody I matched with. It was the last person I dated right before the girlfriend that I had met at that time in 2020. And we got along really well. We had a couple of nice Skype dates before we only had 2 real life dates. And then she was over me for whatever reason. It happens. But the thing was that she lived in Horsham, Pennsylvania, which is past past Valley Forge on the highway.
Wow.
It was
that's far.
A pretty keen 2 hours away from Harrisburg.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize this until we'd been talking for a week and a half. I was like, oh, you're pretty far away.
You kind of have to do that cost benefit analysis. And I've been there too, before Ryan and I met. And during my various hoe phases, you kind of have to be okay, you have to measure hot versus distance of driving and gas mileage and all that kind of stuff. So, it's a little bit of calculus you gotta bring to the table when you're on the dating apps there.
Yeah, there's so many different weird factors that come into play. I would have preferred, thank God, Lauren was kind of far away too-ish. Pine Grove, Pine Grove isn't restrictively far away, but it's also not Harrisburg or Middletown or any place like that. So the dating apps are not always the best at giving you somebody who's realistically feasibly in your circle.
and
Even
you
if you like, I even set the settings to I don't want to date somebody more than 30 miles away, and that was still a thing. So.
I think that what it does, 30 miles, see, when we think about 30 miles, we always think like, oh, 30 miles is not that far. But then you like take into account all the side roads and things like that. Like it's not, it can, 30 miles can get up to about an hour driving, and even an hour is a little excessive. I mean, Ryan was 40 minutes from me, and I was like, oh, that's a little far. But I mean, it worked out. We got married and stuff, so that's cool.
It's because we got married and stuff.
Yeah. I had a client come in the other day, and they saw I have a mouse pad on my desk that is a picture from Ryan and I's engagement shoot.
Aww.
And so they're like, oh, is that your husband? And we're like, yeah, that's my husband. And they'll be like, oh, how did you meet? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, we met on a dating app, Bumble or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I met this couple that they were like, yeah, we met on eHarmony like 15 years ago. Yeah,
so
and that's a weird thought to me.
Did you ever sign up for, like, you're younger, so you probably stuck more with the apps like Tinder, Bumble, and those. Did you ever sign up for eHarmony or one of those?
Nah, no.
Oh man, those sites were so clunky, and so like I don't know if I actually, I signed up for one of them, but I don't think I really ever used it that much because the way that they would monetize these sites is that, you got very limited interactions with people unless you paid their premium fee, which I wasn't going to do because I'm cheap.
Yeah.
I don't think I met a single person on there because you could only, message 2 people a day or something like that on there or send 2 messages a day. And, yeah, they were very clunky. I have people who say they've met their, husbands and such on there. Christine used it for a little bit and met one guy that, did not mesh well with her, way of living and stuff like that. And then ended up dating somebody in our friend circle, also on the offbeats, who ended up being the perfect match for her. So
yeah. Well, when the dating apps, when Tinder first came out, that was right when I started college. And that was probably the prime time for that to become really, really popular for me as an individual going into the dating scene. Because I didn't need a dating app or dating websites in high school because, I was a child. And, you don't really need to...
Can you use those if you're under 18?
I don't think so. You're not... Well, so here's the thing. No, but... people lie. So that's
potentially very hazardous for,
it is.
Yeah.
There are a lot of dangers. So I was talking to another person about the dangers of the online dating. And, I've told you before that I'm a huge fan of the show Catfish.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've learned a lot about, the different, and
I've told you before I worked on Catfish.
Oh, right. I didn't. Maybe I did know that. Anyway,
I feel like I keep bringing it up to people all the time because nobody remembers that Hal
really
worked
cool.
on 2 seasons of a reality show 10 years ago.
I mean, but that's pretty cool though. So you knew Neve and Max and all those people.
Yes,
kind of, sort of.
Neve was awful. I mean, I don't want to say awful, but he was very pretentious. He was exactly the kind of straddling millennial that thought he was going to change the world and was not shy about telling you how much he was changing the world. Max was very nice, and he was. I don't know if you knew this about that, but they. Did you ever see the original documentary that came out?
No, I've seen almost the entirety of the show, though.
So they screened the documentary at Hofstra when I went to school there, my senior or junior year. So I was familiar with the documentary, and nobody else at Relativity that were producing the pilot for the show at the time had actually seen it. And so I had to tell a lot of people what it was about. I'm like, oh, it was about this guy Neve and his brother who took a road trip to track down somebody he was seeing online. The documentary is kind of mean, honestly, because Neve frames it as they don't know what they're going to find when they go there, but they're all chuckling to themselves the whole time. They know full well they're going to find somebody who is not representing herself as she's been online, and it's horribly depressing. It ends up being that the woman who's catfishing him is an overweight middle-aged woman who's taking care of her terminally ill husband and her stepson who has cerebral palsy, so is in a wheelchair, and so creating this online persona was a way for her to live, essentially. And the term comes from, they interview her dad or either her dad or like a neighbor or something about like what was going on. And they're in the deep south. He's like, oh yeah, you know, sometimes we call that just like a catfish, because a catfish can present itself as something else while trying to hide, but be a completely different thing. Like paraphrasing what what he said. But yeah, the documentary was kind of mean-spirited.
Sure. Well, and I feel like some of the episodes can really be like, and very much in the early seasons, I very much got that vibe that it was kind of like poking fun at these people that really just needed, you know, something that wasn't like humiliating, I guess.
So that's why they got Max on the show, actually, was so there were a combination of factors. Like Neve's brother actually got some like legitimate directing gigs after that. Like he directed one of the Paranormal Activity sequels, which was right up his alley because he was documentarian, but also the inclination among the executives at Relativity was that it felt too mean if it was just the two of them. And so they wanted to cast somebody who would be like a more empathetic person. And Max came from a casting call. Like he was not I mean, he is a filmmaker, but he was not like a filmmaker that they saw his work and were like, hey, join our team. They put out casting calls for like documentary filmmakers, and that's where he came from. And Max was very, very sweet. I liked all of my interactions with him. Did not interact with Neve that much because I was a lowly production assistant. I did get him coffee a few times. So
Nice.
he was a black coffee guy. Interesting.
Huh. Yeah. So, I mean, going back to, I think it's really interesting, you know, when Catfish first came about, like, you know, we're looking at the MySpace era and all of those things. And when you watch the show as kind of, not religiously, what had happened to me was I discovered the show a few seasons in. So I binged until I got caught up and have been pretty much watching ever since. I haven't seen like the newest season, but I think it's really interesting to see kind of that evolution of how technology has really impacted the dating sphere. And something that I've got into with banking is, you know, how dangerous catfishing is and how the internet in general is, the scams, it's overall really scary. And there's a YouTuber that I like to watch. I'm not sure if I told you about him before, but his screen name is Kit Boga. Have I told you about him?
I don't think so, yeah.
So his videos usually end up being around 20 or 30 minutes, but it's cut down from hours of him on the phone with scammers pretending to be a victim and wasting their time. He works with different like technology sites to get their website shut down, to get their servers cut off, to get their accounts shut down at different banks and things like that. So this is just what he does for a living, and it's pretty fun to watch because what he'll do is he has like a voice changer, so he's pretending to be elderly most of the time, and he's just messing around with them, trying to get their information so he can screw them up, which is just entertaining to watch. And I actually made my team watch one of his videos recently because it was the exact scheme that someone in real life at my branch attempted.
Well, that's cool. So they're like educational videos for your line of work.
Absolutely. And they're entertaining. And so I made them watch it, and they were like, yeah, that was easy to understand. And so I recommend that YouTube channel if you're, you know, interested in learning more about internet scams and how people get but anyhow, you know, you see in the show Catfish these people who are taken advantage financially, and I see it real life on a weekly basis, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this because this was I want to say like 18 to 20 years ago, there was a big Dateline investigation they did, which was hugely repeated on TV all the time. Like I saw it like maybe 4 or 5 different times. Like it was the To Catch a Predator era too, so it was like
that's even worse.
Yeah, to throw. But what they did was, so there was this old guy who his family had contacted Dateline because he had been, over the course of several years, he had given like something like $50,000 to $60,000 to this online woman he had a relationship with, and she was also sending packages through his house to other people. And basically, they couldn't convince him that she wasn't real. So Dateline did a pretty in-depth investigation to figure out who this person was. And it took them to Nigeria, where they did end up meeting by tricking this person into thinking that they were wanting to go into business with him. It was a guy and another woman basically running this very sophisticated, not just mail fraud scam, because they were getting packages through there, but also just getting cash from him. And they even mentioned there was nothing they could do legally because they had to meet them. They were from Nigeria, but they had to meet in the Netherlands for whatever reason. And yeah, it was so international and so specific. Like, without the resources of a TV show like that, they never would have come anywhere close to finding this person. So.
Yeah, and I have a really good story that embodies kind of how deep this can go and how much this can impact a person's life. So if I told you this story before or said it on the podcast before, stop me. But I don't think I have. And this was someone who's no longer my client, and it's an old bank too. So I obviously won't name names or anything like that. But there was a woman who was coming in to take out large amounts of cash. And from my training and things like that, there are certain things that will throw up red flags for us, when we think someone might be getting scammed. And I had been observing this client for some time, and the second or third time I saw her, I said, hey, want to talk to you a little bit more about, these transactions that you're doing. Want to make sure that you're not being taken advantage of or anything like that. Our job is to make sure that your money is kept safe. And this turned into something like a 7-month-long process where I sat her down, and she told me that she was sending the money to a American soldier in Iraq who had stumbled upon, with his buddies, $1 million in a Taliban hideout. And so she was sending him the money so that he could smuggle the funds back into the United States with the help of an American diplomat and a lawyer from Canada.
So an old take or new take on the old Nigerian prince scam.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So, and she had met, and I asked her, have you met this person in person? No, I met him on Facebook. How long have you been talking to this person? Well, about a year. And, it was her boyfriend, quote unquote. I mean, she had created this emotional attachment to this person who was telling her lies on lies on lies. And so I even had to go so far because I was explaining to her, this is a scam that I see on a weekly basis. Like, I see this all of the time. You need to trust me that I'm telling you the truth. And it got down to the point where I had this conversation with her multiple times. And she kept trying to convince me that it wasn't a scam.
Oh.
And at one point, I mean, there are some things that you pick up along the way in banking. And also for me being a fan of things like Kitboga and Catfish and things like that, I've picked up some tricks along the way to be able to help my customers understand that what's happening to them is a scam.
Yeah, this actually, a different scam entirely. I had an ex-girlfriend who fell for... somebody called her up and said that she had missed jury duty, and unless she gave $3,000 to the Cumberland County courthouse or something, they were going to come and arrest her. And she was she was a very smart person, very intuitive, they're
convincing though.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because she did fall for this hook, line, and sinker and was panicking like crazy. And they wouldn't let her hang up the phone was a scary thing. But
Same thing happened to me.
Well, she was Facebook messaging me in between, being like, just to let you know, this is going on with me. And the more she talked about it, I was like, I think this is a scam. And then I called the sheriff's department of Cumberland County because I could get on a phone. And the guy wouldn't even let me finish telling him what was going on. He's like, tell her to hang up. It's a scam. And it took a lot to convince her because she said, among other things, this was an interesting observation. It was the noise in the background that made her believe it was a real police department because it sounded like there was a lot of busyness going on back there. And so little things like that can just trick your mind into overload, the small details.
What's heartbreaking about the story that I mentioned is that this woman took out a home equity line of credit, lied about what it was for, sent over $80,000 to this gentleman. And then, finally, I'm not sure what broke the camel's back for her, but she finally got a hold of the police and started to believe that it was a scam.
That money is gone.
Oh, it's gone because here's what people need to recognize is if your bank, what happens when we have a conversation with you that you're being scammed, that gets reported. We report anytime there's an unusual financial thing going on, whether or not you agree that it's happening.
So it's not just taking out $10,000 to trigger an investigation.
Right.
Sort of thing.
If we believe that you're being scammed, we will report it. And we will indicate in our report that we did say to you that it was a scam and that you refused to accept that it was a scam. And so when it comes down to you lose $80,000 and you come back to the bank and say, I want my money back, we're going to pull up those reports and say these are all of the times where we disclosed to you that it was a scam and you needed to stop. And banks will even, after enough of these incidents, they will close your accounts and they will no longer do business with you. Yeah,
that's very like, I mean, there's a lot of sympathy and empathy to a person who gets scammed like that. But like, if you keep trying to tell somebody it is a scam and they won't listen to you, like, there has to be a cutoff where you're no longer like liable for what's going on. And you tried so hard, especially since like you can't just willy-nilly reimburse $80,000 to every person who gets scammed.
Exactly.
Because that would be like too much money.
And also, for me, this started way back. I was 19 and I was working for Marshalls at the time, and I got a call from the IRS. Sure. Okay. And I knew nothing about scams at that time. I'm 19. I'm in my first I hesitate to say big girl job because I was in management, but also like I was working at Marshalls. We just call them jobs, Shannon. And so I got this call and they said, you owe something like $8,000 in taxes. I was like, I don't have like 800. I don't even have 800 to my name, let alone 8,000. Especially
when you're like you said you were 19 at the time. Yeah.
Right.
They might owe you $8,000 in taxes.
Right.
In fact, that's much more likely than you owing them.
So, I didn't know any of this at the time. And they said that, I said, look, I don't have $8,000. I don't know what to tell you. And they said, well, what do you have? And I said, I like, well, I have like 600. And they were like, well, we'll take it.
In the form of iTunes gift cards.
Well, and that's what happened. And the thing was that they kept telling me, like, if I said, listen, I'm 19. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to talk to my dad. And they said, no, if you hang up, we'll send the police to your work. They'll XYZ, all that stuff.
Yeah, they never want you to hang up because then you can confirm they're a scam with someone else.
Right, and I know that now, and as a banker, I tell them, and I have stories on stories and stories about this. And so, long story short, I eventually hung up on them, and I called my dad, and I was like, hey, this is what's going on. He said, it's a scam.
Yeah.
And the scammers called me from, they spoofed the number of the Duncannon Police Department when we had one.
Yeah.
And it's coming up in my caller ID as the Duncannon Borough Police Department, and they had told me they were going to call the police, and I'm like freaking out. So I declined the call, and I called back the police department directly. And I said, is someone trying to reach me? And they were like, no one is trying to contact you from our office. And that was what convinced me at the end that it was a scam. And thankfully, I didn't lose anything. I didn't go buy the gift cards or anything like that. But I tell you, I wish I was kidding when I say that this is a weekly interaction that I have. Oh. And it's a lot of different things, too. I've seen grandparents come in because allegedly their grandkids are in jail and they need to send them bond money. But it's not true. And let's see. Recently, I had someone come through the drive-thru requesting $10,000. Oh. And I, questioned them on it, and the scammer was on the phone with them in their car while I was talking to them.
Are you allowed to tell them it's a scam?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But they won't believe you.
Well, sometimes they don't, but I was able to convince the woman to pull around to the front because our lobby was closed, but I was like, I'm going to come outside. We're going to talk through this. And I thankfully was able to keep her from losing any money at that point. But we work very, very hard to avoid these scams from taking place. And I'll tell you, I'll even go so far. I had one gentleman who was being scammed. He said he was sending it to an attorney in Canada.
No.
And I pulled up the lawyer's, quote unquote, website. And I said, is this the lawyer? And he said, yeah. And I pulled a catfish and I screen grabbed the guy's picture and I reverse image searched it. And it showed up on no less than 6 fake attorney websites.
Yeah.
And I've actually found the website that was for that attorney. And I reached out to that attorney's office and I said, hey, this image is being used in reference to scams. And then their tech offices, their IT, shut down those other websites.
This is something that Facebook and Instagram are horrible at, by the way.
And I did it in 5 minutes, by the way.
Our friend Carol, actually, this happened to her. Her Facebook page got hijacked.
I've been reporting.
I reported it like 10 times a day, every single day.
And eventually I gave up on it. But
I got blocked by the scammer because it got to the point where I just got angry enough that every day I was posting on the fake Carol's page, hey, this is a scam, please keep reporting this page. And then one day, fake Carol no longer appeared in my Facebook friends, and so I messaged real Carol, and I was like, yay, I think we finally got taken down. She's like, let me check. Oh no, they just blocked you.
Yeah.
I was squeaky wheeling too much. But what was I going to say? I feel like some of these, like especially the IRS scams, target certain demographics of people.
Oh, they do.
Because there was a weird thing that happened.
It's the young and the old, usually.
I also think like some of the more conservative areas because...
Oh, yes.
Something that was like an underrated, distorted worldview I had from just watching Fox News in my early 20s and like teenage years was they run a lot of, or at least they used to, I don't know if they still do, tax debt relief and tax debt firm ads on that network. And I didn't file a tax return until I was like 25 years old because I was terrified that I was going to owe money to the IRS, and I just tried to avoid it in general, which also not a good thing to do. But like, in reality, I left thousands of dollars on the table because I would have gotten all this money back from, like, I should have gotten refunds. And instead, I was just terrified that I was going to owe money, so I never filed a tax return. And because, like, I can't even imagine why you would need to run ads for that, because I assume that the demographic for people who owe a ton of money to the IRS are, like, maybe like small business owners who just didn't report their taxes on time or something. So, like, individuals, I could be wrong about this. So if I am, shout me out in the comments. But... it was also what you were telling me about these scammers too. Have you seen the documentary series Telemarketers?
No.
It is. I watched this a couple of months ago. It's on Max, and it was a 20-year documentary that these two guys made when they started doing it because they worked at one of these fake charity telemarketing firms that was raising money for the what is it, like the Brotherhood for Cops or something, like the Fraternal Order of Police. And the places were run like madhouses. Like they did drugs on the job. They like played baseball with the trash cans around the place. And so they started just recording things in 2002 because they thought it was the most ridiculous place they'd ever worked. And then it ended up like 5 or 6 years later, they started actually doing investigative journalism work into these organizations. And it was amazing how far and how deep these places went. Like essentially, they were maybe giving 2 cents on the dollar to the police. And the people who were at the top of these scams were living in $30 to $40 million mansions, all while scamming people out of money, thinking that it was going to like firefighters or police.
Right.
And
I always get the calls
sad.
For the police ones.
Yeah, never give to them because...
No. And I'll tell you, there was one particular instance that I'll never forget. It was an older gentleman. He was close to 90 years old, and he came into the branch, and he was going to clear out his entire account. It was over $20,000. And we asked him, like, what is this for? And he said, oh, my wife's in the hospital. And we were like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I was talking to him, and I said, well, is she okay? What happened to her? And what hospital is she in? And he like was being and he had his phone like this kind of like close to him, but. So
he was being scammed.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Poor guy.
And he said, he said, well, that's a lie. My wife isn't in the hospital. And that's as soon as like they get to admit that they lied, like that's a good sign that you can avoid them losing money. And
so can you deny him taking out that $20,000 if he admits that he lied about the initial reason? And do you even want to say this in public? I don't know.
It's not really something that I can go into more detail than what I'm giving you.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's already fascinating enough to me, like what the procedures are for this. And it does make me feel better that you're able to not that it's going to work, like, because my experience trying to convince the ex-girlfriend, that took like 2.5 hours of being like, this is
it's a lot of time and effort.
Well, not just that, but my parents ended up going over to her house afterwards because we narrowly avoided her giving $3,000 to these scammers because she was in like the parking lot of the courthouse for Cumberland County. And it took like, also my dad, who was a former attorney, was sending her messages being like, hey, this is why this is not a scam. Legally, you're not allowed to do this. And don't tell them you want your attorney because I am an attorney. And, I will speak for you. And that's what she did finally after like 2.5 hours. And they hung up on her. And then she realized it was a scam.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So this gentleman, they told him to lie to the bank. And that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
They had claimed to be the bank and said that your account has been compromised. So you need to go to the bank, pull out all of your money and then we'll give you instructions, which is usually buy gift cards or transfer it somewhere else or XYZ. So when I got him to admit that his wife was not in the hospital, I said, then what's going on? He said, well, I'm on the phone with the National Fraud Department or whatever. And it was obviously
the NFD for short.
And he had asked to go to the bathroom, and at the time we didn't have a public bathroom, and it was the scammer telling him to get to a private place to avoid talking to me. And I said, I'm sorry, we don't have a public bathroom. And he went outside. And I don't usually do this because a lot of reasons, but I followed him outside and I said, sir, I really do feel that you're being taken advantage of, and I really would appreciate it if you would hang up so that we can talk this over, or let me talk to that person. And finally, he gave me the phone, and I was speaking to the scammer, and I asked, like, okay, what is your name? Who do you work for? XYZ. And I said, okay, well, I work for the bank. I know that you are a scammer, and I need you to stop. And I said some language that I wouldn't normally say in front of a customer, but
Does the bank condone using that language for scammers?
I don't work for that bank anymore, so
I think it's still warranted and justified, though.
Oh yeah, no, and I think it also, that gentleman needed to see me treat that other person like garbage for him to recognize that, like, I wouldn't treat like if they weren't. You know what I mean?
That is an interesting, like, psychological side effect, is like, this professional who's right in front of me would not treat this person with such disdain unless she was absolutely certain that they were a scammer.
Right. So they eventually, and he started yelling back at me, and I put it on speaker. I was like, would the National Fraud team act like this? Would they say these things to me that he's saying right now? And thankfully, I was able to explain to the gentleman what was happening. He didn't lose any money. But that was all of the money he had at all, like around $20,000. And like, there's nothing that pisses me off as much as these scams.
Yeah.
And as frustrated as I get when they come across my desk, like, I'm more interested in educating the customer and telling them what's going on and being able to help them.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm really passionate about. I tend to get on my soapbox about it with my employees because sometimes they don't, I'll hear someone request a large amount of money and I start shooting messages. I'm like, okay, have you worked with this person before? Is this a normal transaction? What are they using the money for? And they can kind of get on me for being up their ass, but I just see it so often that, like, it's our obligation as bankers to protect your money. Like, when you give the bank your money, it's our job to help you protect it. And so that's why we have all these questions that we ask you. It's for your general safety and well-being.
I'm remembering more details about like this is a story I had almost completely forgotten about because it happened like 3 years ago. But I remember when I called the Cumberland County Sheriff's Department to like check on the veracity of this too. I called them back at one point and I was like, she's not listening to me. I think they kind of just have her on the hook. Could I ask you to call her number and just let her know why this is a scam in this way? And they're like, yes, we can do that. And so I messaged her. I'm like, hey, the police are going to call you. They're going to let you know what's going on. Lie to the scammer and say it's like the kid's school or something like that. And She did take the call and still wasn't really convinced. But it took my dad, I think, and I might be remembering this wrong, but I think that was what got her to sort of believe it, because my dad was a trusted person that she knew.
Right.
And it was quite the thing. But they are really insidious with
Oh, yes.
Again, cannot stress enough, super smart woman, nobody's fool whatsoever. And just for whatever reason, they got one thing that clicked with her, and the entire house came tumbling down in that case. And I think that's the most insidious thing, aside from stealing people's life savings and life equity, is that they completely distort your reality to the point where that fucks you up afterwards.
It does. And I can't tell you, it's heartbreaking to have that conversation with a person, and especially with my older clients. With the younger people, it's not so difficult to have that conversation because it's genuine ignorance and
we're weirdly a little bit more cynical about those things because we've been raised in the era of online scams and phone scams and internet scams.
Yeah, and usually when it happens to the younger people, they're like, I'm just not. I'm an adult for the first time in my entire life, and it's one of those things where it's genuine ignorance. But it really breaks my heart when it's the older people, because these are people, and I feel like this we forget this is because we have a lot of feelings about older people. We generally are like, oh, they're so slow, or they don't know the technology and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, this is a person who has 50, 60 years of adult life experience. And imagine that feeling of coming out the other end, realizing you've been scammed.
Yeah.
And, I don't know about you, but for me as a 27-year-old, I think I'm smart and I have a lot of life experience. But imagine how somebody in their 60s, 70s, 80s feels to know that someone else got the better of them in it. And that's why I think it's so difficult for them to believe that it's a scam, because they're like, I'm smarter than that.
Yeah.
These are people who I've had customers who have been scammed that are business owners that worked in computers. And, these are people that are by no means idiots. Some of them are, but there are a lot of them.
I think you've just also tapped into what the political aspects of a lot of certain movements in American politics might be, is rather than believe you've been duped by somebody who's an idiot, you'll just continue to double down. And weirdly enough, just keep singing the praises of said person over and over again. But what you were saying too, it's weird. The floodgates are opening with all these other stories I've had of people I've known who've been scammed. And my neighbor, who was a prominent divorce attorney, he takes a lot of trips because he's semi-retired. And I think he was in Europe at the time when this happened. But there was a scammer who sent out an email to, among other people, my parents, because they were all in the same friend circle, almost all of them attorneys, from this person being stuck in Spain and saying he needed money from people, and please send me, the back cards of iTunes gift cards, specifically he was asking for, so I can get out of trouble here. And my parents didn't fall for it because they're not that stupid. They're not stupid at all. But at least a couple of them did fall for them, one of whom she is an attorney friend of my parents. She ran for judge a couple of times in Lebanon County, so nobody's fool, but also not the best person in the world. She fell for it really hard and sent, if not in the high hundreds, maybe $1,000 worth of these iTunes gift cards to this scammer. And the way they had gotten this information was so insidious. Was they called this lawyer's office, and his secretary was there because there are other attorneys in the office. And they asked for this person by name, and she was like, I'm sorry, he's abroad right now, which is what you're supposed to say in that case. And may I leave a message? No, I'll call him when I get back. And so based on that information, they were able to reverse engineer his trip and say that he was in trouble because his friends knew that he was out of the country. And then this one lawyer woman who fell for this, because she's not the best person, really screamed at and blamed and attacked the secretary in the situation, because she didn't want to believe that she'd been scammed and wanted to blame everything on the fact that the secretary gave the perfunctory answer she was supposed to give. I'm sorry, he's abroad right now. And the scammer took that, ran with it, and was able to just get his friends, because he just found out. He also, I don't know if it was a man or a woman scamming, but they found this information online because they just reverse engineered on Google associated attorneys with this particular attorney. And that's how they got all the email addresses for these people. So
it's really something I want to very much dial in on. And I hope that out of all the things that you have learned, dear listener, today.
Yeah, this might be the most informational depression vacation ever.
And, I genuinely want everyone to recognize this because we are so cynical as a human race, I guess. And,
it's what's kept us alive this long.
Right. What I want to say is that anyone who's been scammed, like, I want you to know, or like if you feel like you're being scammed, there's this negative connotation that if you're being scammed, then you're dumb. And I want to kind of dispel that idea because these scammers, you have no idea how intricate their scams are.
It's like Jedi mind tricks.
It is.
Yeah.
There are people out there who are the smartest people in the world. They've been scammed. And it's very important to have empathy in those situations when a loved one has been scammed.
Yeah.
If you're in an industry that you see it often, for example, banking, it's so important to have empathy and to recognize the emotions that come with being scammed, especially with these romance scams that that's what kind of brought us to this topic.
It's playing on the most basic of human wants, needs, and is absent for a lot of people.
Right. And these scams are so long term. I've talked to people who have been in online relationships for over a year that they come in to send money to that person. And I'll just tell them, why do you feel that you need to send this money to this person? And they'll say, well, they need it. And they're my loved one. And, I've been dating them for over a year. And sometimes these and you have to put it in logical terms for them sometimes, where I ask them well, have you met them in person? And when they say no, I'm like, okay, I would not give Hal, I wouldn't even give Hal $5,000.
I wouldn't ask for $5,000.
Right.
So that's probably
he wouldn't, but I wouldn't, it's first of all, I don't really have it to give. But second of all, in the level of friendship that we have, there are several other closer people that you could ask for that $5,000, and the same for me. I would go to my parents, or I would go to someone I've known for 10, 20 years. I'm not going to a person I've known for less than 5 years to ask for that kind of money. And so you have to put it in those logical terms of saying, okay, why you? Why me? Why are they asking you for this? Because they feel like you'll give it to them.
These romance scams actually, again, more stories just pouring out of Hal's head. There is somebody in my sphere of people I interact with, I'm not going to say where they come from, who we're all pretty sure that he's being catfished. He's been in an online relationship with a certain person for years at this point. And every time she's arranged to meet him, something has fallen through, essentially. And she's from France or someplace like that. Never has asked for money, interestingly enough. So I think it's just a person catfishing him just to have a relationship online with somebody. But it's gotten to the point where none of us talk about it anymore because in fact, somebody in this circle was also I should tell him he's being catfished. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think he's going to believe you. And I think that the potential for humiliation is so high with that particular thing. I would just let him eventually, hopefully, come to that conclusion on his own and just not talk to him about it because, nobody wants to think they're being scammed, especially.
Right.
And this is somebody who's not a socially maladjusted person. He's a good-looking guy, a little heavy, but mostly just a normal human being. And he's fallen kind of hook, line, and sinker for this. So. Yeah. It's a very human, and that's what makes catfishing and scamming so insidious, is it plays on, I think, very human fears, wants, needs, turns them on your head, and then distorts your reality to the point where, money is a big thing. Losing $80,000 to a scammer you're never going to recover from that. But I also think the psychological damage it does to you of being, that's something you will 100% never recover from.
I've had very, very heartfelt conversations with victims of scams, and I can't tell you how many people have been brought to tears over, and it's not just tears. It's heartbreaking, to come to that realization and to, have to deal with all the fallout of that too. $80,000, and it wasn't even at $80,000 sitting in a savings account. It was
home equity.
They borrowed it.
Yeah.
So first of all, under the assumption they borrowed it under the assumption that they were going to be getting hundreds of thousands, and so it's in your mind it's I do this temporary thing to get this huge windfall. But I have hard news for everyone that windfalls like that don't just happen.
Would have been better off buying 80 grand worth of lottery tickets, let me tell you.
And you can't, and don't even get me started on the lottery scams. My God. But like the first rule of lottery scams is you can't win if you don't play.
Yeah.
So I always ask, like, did you play the lottery? And they're like, well, no. It's like, then you didn't win the lottery.
So I get because I'm the person who schedules the witnesses for the lottery, I get a lot of occasionally, when I'm calling prospective witnesses, a lot of exactly those sort of reactions. Like, hi, this is Hal from the lottery. How are you doing today? Hal from the lottery, huh? Or sometimes they would just hang up on me. And it's gotten to the point where I've just written like a script where I'll just be like, hi, this is Hal from the lottery. You sent me an email a little bit ago about wanting to be a witness, and I wanted to know if you wanted to know more about that. And that is like getting the information out to somebody before they have a chance to hang up is like a big deal, because there are a lot of lottery scams out there. So when you be like, hi, this is Hal from the Pennsylvania Lottery. How are you feeling? How are you doing today? That sends off a trigger to some people. It's like, okay, how are you going to try to scam me?
Yeah.
No, not trying to scam you. And I have been angrily hung up on. Some guy was like, fuck you, asshole, and hung up on me immediately. And I did call him back because I wanted to like be like, hey, just to let you know, I wasn't scamming you. And he blocked the number immediately. So I was like,
well, you tried.
I'm like, okay, not going to take that anymore. But
yeah, it's hard. And I've seen so much in just almost 4 years of banking too. I mean, it's I've seen everything, every sort of scam you can think of. I've seen it across my desk, and that's something like I said, I'm very passionate about, and I hope that, you know, if you like, I don't know what. I hope that someone has learned something from this, and you can share this information with other people, because the most important thing we can do is educate others on what these scams look like and how to avoid being scammed. My biggest piece of advice is get yourself a really good banker, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just go to the bank you already work with, and like get somebody in the branch who you know really well and who handles, you know, just get a point of contact who's a person that you can trust, who's local. That's like the best thing that you can do, because we have the training, we know what we're doing, and we genuinely just want to make sure that you're protected.
It really is just like trust that trumps all in there. Like, as I was saying with the ex-girlfriend, it wasn't the Cumberland County Sheriff calling her, giving her my information, saying your boyfriend called and I just wanted to let you know this is a scam, that broke that spell for her. It was my dad, who she knew, trusted, and knew that he knew a lot about the law in Pennsylvania, that was able to like break that spell and it only got it just enough that she hung up, or just not hung up, but said that, hey, I have this attorney who wants to talk to you, and that got them to hang up, because they knew that there was no way once she had broken that gate that they were going to be able to continue the scam.
And I've seen, I've had people at my desk that are like, I have the person's phone number right here. I'll be like, great, let me call them. And I will call them, and they pick up and they're like, hello, this is whatever fake business name they've come up with. And I'll say, hi, this is Shannon Fields. I'm the manager of this bank in this location. And usually as soon as they hear that, they hang up. And I'll say, okay, so given that they just hung up on me after learning that I'm your banker and the manager, no less, does this sound like an attorney's office to you?
Is that professional?
Yeah, right. And so it's like I said, I really just, and I always tell my customers after they're victims of scams, I give them my direct line, and I say, if you ever get a phone call about someone asking for money or your information or anything, and you're not sure, even a little bit of doubt that you don't know who you're talking to, you hang up and you call me.
Woo.
I mean, that's just, it's just so important, and it's rampant, and I feel like it's something that's never going to go away. And we as banks, we try to stay, one step ahead of the scammers, but they are always innovating. They're always getting better.
As long as people have had money, there have always been people wanting to scam and cheat you out of that money, like for whatever reason. So it will never go away. It's just bad people being bad people, or sometimes desperate people becoming bad people. But So this has been a very informational, educational episode on scams in general. And as long as you stay a little bit cynical in those respects, I hopefully...
And skeptical.
Yeah. But anyway, talking about non-scam things, there was just like one thing I wanted to talk about today, which I thought was pretty cool, and it won't take very long since we only have like 10-ish minutes. But I've been on more of a horror kick lately. Like I did watch X finally, which I really, really enjoyed. I haven't seen Pearl yet, but I'm going to watch it like sometime this week. And I don't know, it felt like X was like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but with like a lot of interesting other things happening in the background, like sort of ideas about like sexuality and like lust, and like because Pearl obviously is like a representation of all that in the movie. So long story short, I've been on a huge horror kick lately.
Yeah.
And like I think I've mentioned on the podcast before, my absolute favorite game series, especially for horror, was Silent Hill, because Silent Hill usually prioritized like slow freak you out scares over just like jump scares.
I felt X had a lot of that. Yeah.
Oh, there was a lot of slow burn. Like even when something happened, you knew it was gonna happen. Like I knew as soon as
but they dragged it out and then like made it even creepier.
Like when RJ was looking through that thing, I was like, I knew exactly what's gonna happen here.
Yeah.
But it was I think this was yesterday or within the last couple of days, they announced the next Silent Hill game that's going to happen in like this huge reboot of the series, because it was dormant for like 12 years and they just recently brought it back. And it is a very interesting concept for a game. It is a game that is meant to be completed in 2 hours. It's called Silent Hill Short Messages. It's a first-person horror game where you're going through just a haunted apartment building. And again, designed to be completed in just 2 hours. And I think that that's a brilliant format for not just a horror game, but maybe just a game in general. Because, like, I mean, I'm a fan of the Final Fantasies, which are these huge, like, 50 to 60-hour sprawling RPGs. But, like, the concept of, like, maybe paying $10 for a game that has a finite completion, I think that is a pretty awesome idea that gaming, I don't know how feasible economically it is for them to keep doing it, but I'm really intrigued by this game. The trailer looked scary as fuck, and just knowing that it's something that like I'm going to sit down and it's going to be over in a couple of hours is very appealing to me.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that turns out.
Yeah, it's it looks like the only problem is I don't have a PS5 or whatever the current generation of games are. I only have a PS3 that I inherited from somebody who didn't need it anymore. But like I mostly just play games on the Switch these days, which is also outdated at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been much more into like I want to see some more of the horror movies like that I've missed over the years, and also like just after having a nice talk with like Wallace going to and from Steel Stacks last weekend, there are so many really good movies I haven't seen yet this year that I'm really just intrigued to see. I just need to find the time to sit down and actually watch them. Yeah.
Well, you'll have to let me know. Well, you'll have to keep us, the podcast, updated on your horror exploits.
Yeah. If anybody has a PS5 they want to lend me so I can play short memory, or I forget what it was called, short messages, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have anything going on in your life you want to talk about?
Well, so something that's fun. One thing I wanted to focus more on this year was music, because I used to. So I sort of play guitar. My dad got me my first guitar when I was 13. Everything I know about guitar, I taught myself, and I honestly don't know all that much. Like I know enough to play like campfire songs and that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I wrote a song when I was like 17 that actually turned out pretty good. But I'd like to get back into writing. So I mean, I've been working on a short story. I wrote a song back in August that I want to put to music. So I decided to get guitar lessons, and my first lesson is on Wednesday.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
So my experience with guitar, I mean, I haven't taken a guitar lesson. I mean, technically, I took a 1-credit guitar class my last semester of college because I needed 1 credit. And I did learn some things there, but that was like a group class setting. And other than that, I didn't take lessons past, I don't know, junior year of high school. But lessons send you on the right path, basically. Like they'll teach you how to do chords, the basis behind chords. And then the best guitar teachers will ask you to come in with a song you want to learn how to play. And that's like how you go from there. And then you learn more things as you learn songs that you like to play. And like for me, I mean, there are a lot of people, especially people who teach guitar, who will dispute this. But I think the best guitar lessons is that you like take them until you're able to fly on your own, and then you figure out the rest on your own. Yeah,
I think big thing for me is learning what I'm doing wrong on some chords, because like I can see how to do them, but I can't make my fingers do them. Like barred chords, I am completely shit at.
Yeah. So bar chords, I Yeah. I mean, there are...
Anyway, so that's why I'm getting a teacher.
You
And
could always
reading
just go to
tab.
power chords too. Like
Yeah.
those are just bar chords with the prime two, and
I want to be able to read tab and eventually want to be able to play electric guitar. So I think those are two good goals to have.
interestingly enough, so tab, tab, you could learn on your own right now.
I
It's very
tried.
simple. Oh,
I've tried, and I can't get the logic to work in my brain.
I mean, I could try to show you that too if you would like sometime. But, tab is pretty straightforward. Guitar teachers, at least mine, hate tablature because it's not reading music. It's more like an instruction manual of just how to... I had a guitar teacher tell me that he thought that was the cheater's way to learn how to play guitar. But the way he was trying to teach me was like all this complicated music, like actual notes on things, which I was never in a million years going to be able to get. I mean, I could have if I made that my prime focus, but we all have varied interests.
Yeah.
I think tab is the best thing to happen like ever to aspiring guitar, because it only sort of became with the like before the internet was big on tab. When I was learning how to play guitar in like 97, the way that you would learn how to play songs other than just listening to them and figuring them out is guitar magazines would usually include like 5 or 6 popular songs in tab and in music format at the end of every issue. And I still have tons of guitar magazines because this is what I spent my money on, so I could learn how to play like pop songs. Once the internet became a bigger thing, like ultimateguitar.net is probably the best like source of tabs in general, and you can just learn how to play basically anything on there. And so I think it really democratized the idea of learning how to play songs. Of course, you could always have just figured out how to play it on your own too, but
Yeah.
but
I just wanna
sometimes
get
they're
a little
super
more,
complicated.
Yeah, I just want to get a more like I want to get better and get back into, like I said, writing more. So
You and Ryan can start a 2-person band then.
yeah, that'd be good.
With piano, trombone, and guitar.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, so yeah, that was our hour-ish of time.
Nice.
We had a fun time talking about scammers,
Yep.
guitars, and short-form horror games. Mostly scammers, but
Yeah.
yeah, but have a wonderful week, everybody. I'm looking forward to karaoke tonight, even though I sound like death right now. So karaoke is going to be fun. Hopefully y'all have a very nice week, and we'll talk to you next week. Purdue.